Welcome to the stage 2 lift of this P2 Volvo XC70. I have 26 3D printed parts, $50 worth of nuts and bolts, XC90 front struts, XC90 front CV axles. You might notice that I'm already super greasy and gross and that this car is already obviously being worked on. That's because I had to do the power steering rack in it, and that involves dropping the subframe, so I figured while I was in there, I might as well do a body lift, aka drop the subframe so we can lift the car further. We're also going to be able to see how well the plastic that has been up there in the front for the front strut spacers has aged. So as you can see here, we do already have this partially disassembled so we could get the subframe lowered enough to get the power steering out. However, we still do need to pull these CV axles out, which at this point they should just... Oh man, keyword being should. Well, it would seem that stuck CV axles are sort of a common problem. All right, I've ordered some CV removal tools that should make this thing pop right out. Cross your fingers. In the meanwhile, we can try to swap over the new struts. Well, that's one way to do it. Now we can do something I was really looking forward to. We can actually check on our 3D printed part, which really interestingly has warped to the shape of the seat, but it's still like, it feels really sturdy. It like warped without breaking, which is really impressive. And these we're actually gonna reuse on top of the XC90 front struts. These give us about 2 inches and the XC90 struts give us about another 2, so that'll give us 4 inches total. It really is interesting seeing how much they actually flexed without breaking. That is obviously confidence inspiring and worrying. If you remember with the trip where we went to look at fire lookouts in this thing, the bolts up top were actually loose, and I would say that this is why, because these flexed. I don't think we'll end up with them loose because they're already pre-flexed this time. If you remember, we actually had to weld these bolts on here so the nuts could be tightened from the top without these spinning. So we need to take care of that on the new struts. But before that, I actually went to the pull and save and pulled them out myself. So let's cut to that and then we will get welding. I should be fixing the power steering on this thing right now, but instead I'm going to look for more parts to lift it further. We'll see if I find anything. All right, they are all in the same row, so we shouldn't have to look too far. I just gotta find that row. A13, that is us. So this is the T6, so we could take the suspension out of it if it still has it. But let's go further down the line and see if we can find a T5. This one is the V8. This one here on the end is also the V8. And this one doesn't have a badge. Let's go take a look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That looks like 5 cylinders to me. Let's see if they got the parts. Okay, yeah. Drive shaft here, shock here, and someone even already took apart the hub for us here. So the drive shaft and the shock are really easy to get to. This is gonna be awesome. Let's go get the tools. Are the 2.5 XC90s front wheel drive? Huh, yeah, I don't see a rear drivetrain. I guess it's time to get started. Well, 1 part down, 3 to go. Dude, I think this half shaft is cooked. Look at this one. There's no play in this end. I mean, yeah, there's just no way it's supposed to be making that noise. I mean, listen to that. I gotta get these back out of the car and we'll come back for the parts in a minute. So I stopped by Spalding Imports, it's in the area, and they actually do have one and they can have it to me on Monday or Tuesday. So I'm probably gonna go with that, though it is gonna cost me the same amount as those other 3 parts combined. So I think it's still cheaper than anything I found on eBay, so it's still a good deal, but not quite as good as pulling it yourself. We might have a problem though. I wouldn't really blame you if you weren't able to tell the difference between these. These things kind of look to be identical. Maybe the XC90 has a slightly beefier spring, but I'm not even sure about that. In the footage you just saw where I pulled these out of the pull and save, I actually did pull them out of a front wheel drive vehicle, and so that drive shaft that I pulled out actually won't work, so I had to go get a drive shaft from somewhere else. But I wonder if the front wheel drive XC90 also has the same front struts from the XC70. So on the XC90, we have 15.4 millimeters. On the XC70, we have 14.2. Okay, so the springs definitely are beefier on the XC90, so that must be where the extra 2 inches comes from. Now for honestly probably the most fun part of the job. And just like the last time we did this, we had to hammer out these studs so we could put in longer bolts, as you can see on this thing. And this time, I think I will be getting full thread. These are only half thread because I had to use washers up top to get them cinched down. And that actually kind of modified the metal up there, which I don't like to see. So we're definitely gonna be getting full thread. All right, we are back with 6 brand new bolts with full threads this time. And these are gonna go in here and I'm gonna have to tack them down. Because I used full thread this time, I can actually just use the nut to hold it in place while I weld. I mean, they're booger welds, but they are my booger welds. And honestly, these are such low stakes because once they're tightened, the nuts will hold the bolts in. So these don't really need to hold longer than just enough to get them tight. Before we have to call it a day while we wait for that tool for the CV axles, we can transfer over the sway bar end links. That was a lot of work, but overall I'd say it went pretty well, and we are ready to reassemble this thing tomorrow when our new tool gets in.
All right, I got my new tools. We're gonna get under there and see if we can get those CV axles out.
So the way that this thing works is I will slide it up here between the CV axle and the transmission and I'll hammer on it. And I believe we have gotten this thing out. Amazing what having the right tool can do for you. Let's go grab the other one and then we'll compare to our new ones. Oh. So here's our new versus old. The ones on the outside are from the XC90. You can see that here they have a bigger shaft, as well as the thing that makes them slip. Means they can extend and contract. It's a different design, as you can see here. Apparently it's a more robust design. Let's get these things thrown back in and then get the suspension back in and start getting things bolted back together. All right, so I'm actually looking at the guide here, and you need to use some washers on the XC90 CV axles, as this part is slightly longer, and therefore the ABS ring here, this thing that detects the wheel speed, will not be able to detect the wheel speed because it will be misplaced. So I need to make a run to the hardware store to grab these washers, hopefully. You might say that that trip was a wash. Yeah, these fit right on here. I think we're gonna have to sort of modify them to make them conical in the center because this is conical here. Right now you're watching me try to modify the washers with my Dremel to make them fit. However, we're gonna kind of skip over that, and the reasoning for that will become incredibly evident later. Oh, I think we're in. Beautiful. So you might remember this from last time, but I actually had to hammer these together to get the top hat spacer on as well as get it on, so I think it's time for us to do that. Dude, and the crazy thing is, it isn't even close to actually being in. It's completely the wrong size. Well, our only chance on this axle here is to try and use a bolt extractor to get that off and just hope that we don't end up having to buy another axle. Need I remind you that I need to get this done in time for a road trip in no more than 2 weeks. Later today, I'll have to see if I can extract this bolt from the axle. All right, my bolt extractor kit has arrived. Can't imagine this works, but we got it on here with an impact, so. No way. We just broke off the tap. This thing is cooked. That thing is broken off in here. This axle end is freaking done. So there is one more solution I can do without having to buy new axles, and that would be to swap the ends off of my XC70 axles onto these XC90 axles, and that would also mean that I wouldn't have to use the washers on the end, which is honestly kind of a Jake solution. So, I mean, considering this is trash otherwise, what have I got to lose? We might as well give it a shot. He's right, you might as well give it a shot, but I did do that and it didn't work. The issue I ran into was hammering the XC70 axle end back onto the XC90 axle. I got both of the ends off, but I couldn't get it back together, and so, well, here's the conclusion. I think we're done with that. I think we just got to get a new axle, another $100, my mess up. that's how it is. Dude, I'm gonna support the small business and buy those things for 60 bucks online. This is just stupid. This project's already way over budget and over time. We might as well wait a little longer for the proper part. Tomorrow I'll have to see if I can get that new axle, and then I'll get back to you the next time we can start working on this thing. Holy crap. I hope I can get this thing put back together, man. I only got like a week and a half. The new axle, as well as the axle spacers that we need to make the ABS work, are currently in the mail. However, I realized we can get started on the rear part of this lift, which we should, God, I hope we should have all the right parts for. So let's knock this out while we wait for that, because I don't know if I mentioned this yet, but I have to basically have this thing done by Sunday, and it's currently Tuesday. And that's because we're going on a 3,000 mile road trip with a lot of off-roading, which we are gonna be doing with this untested build, as it turns out. So just like in the front, we're going to be using subframe spacers to drop the subframe, but then instead of new rear struts, new rear shocks, we have these top hat spacers, which are going to go above the suspension to raise that up. Back here, we also don't have to mess with any new CV axles, because apparently the stock ones are fine. I hope and think that the rear is a lot easier to lift than the front, because it has just a lot less going on. So I believe there's just one bolt here and then a few bolts up here. And I guess I'm gonna start undoing those. Oh wow, the subframe is just dropping right away. All right, let's get a jack under here and then take out the other bolt on this side. All right, let's see if it drops down, if I lower the jack, or if I need to go disassemble the other side. Yeah, as you can see, it just dropped right down, and I think I actually have enough space to get the subframe spacers in. However, I do want to, of course, drop this down first. All right, so we have our coil out. So this piece goes like this. All right, I guess we gotta see if we can get this thing back in here now. Wait a second, aren't we gonna need longer bolts? Do I have longer bolts? Uh-oh. Yeah, these things are nowhere near long enough. I do have extra bolts for the subframe, but I don't think I bought any for the suspension itself. So I'm gonna have to go pick some up, I guess. I will be right back while I go in search of some replacement bolts. All right, like 25 bucks later, we've got our new hardware. Let's try to get this thing bolted back in and this side of the car lifted. I can't believe, well, knock on wood here, I can't believe it's this easy. All right, so we've got to slip our spacer in here like this. All right, let's drive that in. Let me tell you, it is so much easier when things go to plan to make a darn video. This is going so smoothly. God, why do I keep saying these things? Now we just need to insert the subframe spacers and get this side of the subframe bolted back up. That just sits up there. We put our bolt through it, and then we'll have to use the jack to bring that up more close to where it needs to be. As for this one in here, you can see our main perch point for our spacer. However, we also have two more jack points that we have little mini spacers for. Aren't they just adorable? Something that worries me is that the washers I have are very small compared to the original ones. I think I'm gonna try to get these off and put them onto the new bolts. Wait, these are not the right size. So we might be making another run to the hardware store. All right, another 30 bucks later, and I think we've got what we need to put this thing back together once and for all. Hell yeah, now to do the other side, which is gonna go super smoothly, right? Dude, we are lifted. All right, let's drop this thing down and see how it sits. Well, once our parts for the front come in, I hope it goes half as smoothly as that. I will see you again soon. All right, here's our second axle. This one cost me even more than the first one and looks to be in worse shape, actually being a little bit rusty, but we don't really have much other choice, so we're gonna throw this in here, and actually we are not gonna connect it up to the hub because the spacers that we need to make this line up with the XC70 have not come in yet. They're not actually coming in till Tuesday, and on Friday we are leaving on a massive road trip, so we're gonna be cutting it close. So today we're gonna get this thing back together as much as we can without putting these guys in. All right, so if I grabbed all the right hardware from the hardware store, we should have all the washers we needed. I grabbed extra when I was, well, not extra, but hopefully enough to do this, because these things were not cheap. Up here, aside from the top hat spacers that we reused, I have 12 more 3D printed parts. These are for the jack points, these are for the subframe itself, and these 4 actually go in the subframe bushings to kind of stiffen them up. These ones go in last, but first things first, we need to tidy up everything that we can before we actually lift the subframe, because we still haven't bolted the power steering back in, that sort of thing. Shit, fuck. How the fuck? Well, my watch just called 911, so that's neat. Uh-oh, with everything bolted in, I don't know if I can get these in. Let's see if we can do it by dropping the engine down, because now the engine is attached to the subframe, so dropping the engine down should mean dropping the subframe down. Did that give us the space we need? I don't know. By hanging on it with my full body weight, we might be able to make this happen. And this one at the back goes in no problem. This one doesn't have the alignment pin, so it's gonna be a little trickier. I think we definitely wanna install the other side first. And while I'm guessing that I'll really appreciate those alignment pins as I'm putting this thing up, this one goes in really easy without it. Now, time to see if we can get a bolt started. Oh, that's interesting. So our little spacers went around that pin, but that means that the subframe itself does not actually go around that pin. And so the subframe is no longer self-aligning. That is gonna make this difficult. Oh man, this is gonna be brutal. Hey man, that's one bolt started. Never mind. All right, so now the subframe is completely supported by the jacks instead of the engine support above. So we should be more easily able to just push it around and it might stay there. I think there was some tension on those things up above. Dude, that one's in. Dude, I think that one's in too. Dude, that's in. So I've actually realized that I've forgotten these plates in the front as well as these plates in the back. So we're gonna put this one here and then we'll have to go back around and put the rest of them on. Another thing I forgot to put in actually was the bushing stiffeners. So let's get those in here before we put this back up. If we can, they should just slip right in, right? All right, I got some grease on it. Let's see if that helps. Oh yeah, there we go. And then this piece, oh, I forgot the plastic piece. Honestly, I don't know if this fits anymore. I guess I'll put it on there. Worst case scenario is it just breaks. Well, that's not started. Son of a biscuit. You get it far enough. Ooh, that thing started. All right, now I'm gonna go around and loosen all of these and put those bushings in as well as their respective metal plates that I forgot. With that, our lift is done. Well, I have to get the suspension back together.
All right, the key to finishing this product, these 2 beautiful machined aluminum parts from, I believe it's Slab Motion Works. I'll leave a link to his store down in the description. These are like almost the only thing he sells, so I'm glad someone has started selling them so I can do the proper solution instead of using washers. I don't think I've ever been more excited to get a car back together and on the road. I think this thing's gonna look ridiculously tall and have a lot of ground clearance. Maybe the only other time I was more excited is when I did the engine in the Subaru Leal. So these have a bevel on one side and are flat on the other. The bevel goes up along the axle and those just sit on there just like that. Very snug, very much nicer than I could have done with those washers. And then of course we have to fit this through here. So what I'm doing here is using the XC70 bolt to suck it through, and then I'll use the XC90 bolt without the little rubber bushing to suck it through the rest of the way, and then we can finally install the XC90 bolt with the little rubber bushing. However, we need to go do the other side because I need the washer off of this to use on this bolt to suck it through. First things first, we gotta put our spacer on and get our XC70 bolt tightened down, and our shorter XC90 bolt. Finally, we can put on our XC90 bolt with the rubber bushing. Next, I think we'll try and get our suspension bolted up here. These are camber bolts. I'll show you what they do in a second. They were in the bottom of the freaking pile of winter tires for the Crown Vic. How convenient. So how these work is there is this lobe and you can rotate the bolt in here and that will either push the strut further out or further in. This is why I wanted to do this before I got the subframe in, because it can be a real freaking pain to get everything lined up. And it would be easier with the subframe out, but I just needed to get that put back together because we were running short on time here. So what I did there is I just rotated it around and hopefully this
is just about lined up now, which it is, hell yeah. The wheel speed sensor, this is the reason we had to put those spacers in there, so it would line up with the ring so it could see how fast the wheel was moving. So we took off these pieces of plastic. They go hereabouts, but due to the subframe being dropped, they don't fit anymore, so we're just gonna leave them off. And that said, I think we're done with this side for now. I tell you what, we are getting dangerously close to a test drive. Obviously the alignment's gonna be way off. We still have to fix that, but we're getting dangerously close, man. All right, moment of truth. You know what? The front looks more or less normal. Honestly, we might have a little bit of rake towards the front. The front might be slightly lower than the rear. Okay, seeing it from a little further back, it definitely kind of still looks like it's on jack stands, even though it's completely on the ground. All right, the total distance I've driven it so far is from over there to over in this driveway. So we're actually gonna take this thing on a proper test drive and see if we hear anything weird or anything breaks. Here, take a listen to this. The turbo's definitely louder. I must have disconnected some hose. Why would the turbo be louder? I'll have to look into that. In the meanwhile, I guess we can still see if the lift did any good. Let's do some off-roading here. Honestly, that little area there was nowhere near the capabilities of the XC70 anymore. The XC70 is just too capable. I was very impressed. I didn't really show it in the video, so I thought I'd come in here and show it. I'm so excited about this thing being lifted. All right, well, I think we do know that it's probably at least not gonna fall apart on us immediately. Then again, maybe I was just more worried about it falling apart than whether it was capable or not. This was like the first test drive, and I've driven it more since then. All right, I'm back out here. I'm gonna see if I can figure out anything that might have come loose while we had the subframe dropped and the engine pulled up. Well, I can't find anything obviously wrong, and I don't have any like vacuum codes or any other engine codes. So I wanted to show Leah how great it sounds right now. And she actually said it sounds like there's a hole in the firewall here. And I was like, you know what? I did have to mess with the steering column, so I don't really know how this goes back on, but you know, I wonder if because we dropped the subframe, if this just won't go back quite right. I mean, that's at least kind of on there. Let's see if that helped with the noise. It's definitely a lot quieter. I'm gonna drive it around a little bit and see if it stays quiet though, because it might just come loose again because it's not properly installed. That was definitely where the noise was coming from. As much as I like the noise, it's probably good to keep that thing installed for some reason or another. All right, we got some cleaning to do, and then we're gonna have to align this thing, and then hopefully we'll be ready to go on our road trip. While he cleans the shop, let me catch you up to speed on exactly what the plan is and what worries I have. Last night, Monday night, Leah and I took like 3 hours to try and align the car, and I could not get it aligned. I have the Quick Trick alignment kit, and I've been able to do successful front wheel alignments before, but it comes with no instructions for doing an independent rear suspension alignment. So I wasn't able to get the rear aligned. I think it's way out of spec, but I don't have any way to get it into spec. All of that said, I have made an appointment at a professional shop for tomorrow, Wednesday. We leave on Friday, or at least we're supposed to. However, if they find any parts that are bad, like bushings and stuff, then they aren't gonna align it, and I'm gonna need to replace those. And I don't know if we'd be able to go on the trip. That's where we're at now. We're gonna gloss over the failed alignment and cut to whatever is up next if the alignment at the shop works out tomorrow. I am very stressed. I hate that I cut this so close, but that's just how it worked out. I was waiting for parts. All right, I've got the skateboard and all my work stuff set up so I can get some work done while they're looking at the car. I am so nervous and stressed about this. It's like a final exam that you want to prepare more for, but you can't, and I haven't been able to for the whole past day, but I'm so stressed. I hope they don't find anything, but if they do, we'll have to problem solve and see if we can still get out of here by Friday. Enough of me yapping. Let's go get aligned, hopefully, and I'll update you after we're done. Oh my God, I am so relieved. They did find a bad part. The tie rod end, one of them was bad, and I just told them to fix it, and they said they could have that done today. They weren't sure they'd get the alignment done, but they did. The steering wheel isn't quite straight, but that's okay as long as none of the tires wear too strong, and they said I could bring it back later when they have time to fix it because they kind of squeezed in my tie rod job. All of that said, we are going on the road trip next week. My plans are not fouled. Everything is great. That is such a weight off my shoulders. I'm gonna go enjoy a nice night of trivia tonight after I pick up oil supplies, because we do need to change the oil in this car before we leave. It's been a while since I've done it. But all I've got to say is that thanks so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe to see next week's video where we begin the Fire Lookout trip. It's almost 3,000 miles of on and off-road exploration to get to fire lookouts. It's going to be an absolute blast. Of course, leave a comment down below if you saw anything I did wrong in this video, or if you have any questions on the list. I'll be down there answering them. And leave a like, of course, if you like seeing me more stressed than I've ever been in my, well, probably not ever, but in a long time. I am so relieved and so excited. I'm gonna go enjoy a beer and some trivia. All right, oil change, speed run. It should go a lot better this time than last time, considering I have the tool for the oil filter housing. Start the clock. Well, I mean, is it done if there's a bunch of oil on the ground? Good thing I said fastest, not cleanest, but you know, I also don't think I did too good on speed. And also, I'm telling you this before I've even filled it up. All right, I think we're ready for the trip next week. Make sure to subscribe.